Hello, welcome back to Oracle DBA tutorial. In this tutorial, we are going to discuss about how do you connect to a database instance. So to start with, this is what we have discussed in our last video. So this is an abstract picture of a Oracle database server, and this is the instance, and these are the database files. And then what we want to learn here in this video, how do I connect, this is a database server and users needs to connect to this database server. So what happens when a user wants to connect to a database server? All right, so before going to that, let's try to draw another analogy. Let's say here is your friend, and your friend wants to come to your house. So what you need to, so this is, say, this is A and this is B, and here is B inside his house. Alright, so A wants to come to B. So what you need, what A needs to know so that he can come to B? The first thing is B's address. Okay, the first thing is B's address, and let's say this house of B has only one door, or one way to enter, right? So that means B's door, let's say, or B's gate, or whatever you can tell. Okay, so he needs to know B's address, he needs to know B's door, and let's say B is living here, and there are multiple rooms are there. So exactly we need to know which room B exists. Okay, and let's say that we have some kind of a mechanism where we need to understand this is A's friend. That means some kind of password or some kind of keyword or something that only only if A matches with that, then A is allowed to get in. Exactly similar way database works. What we have, let's say this is our client, and somewhere in the world we have our database server. So from now onwards we are going to do a cylinder, and that cylinder is basically Oracle database server. Okay, so somewhere in the world we have a database server, and inside the database server we have an user. Let's say the user is Scott. Okay, so let's say user is Scott, and now how this client is going to connect to that Scott? The first thing client needs to know is the machine name where this database server is running, machine name or the IP address or machine name. Then second thing is needs to know what is the database name. The third thing it needs to know what is the port number, or equivalent thing in our analogy is what is a door. So what is the port number on which this database listener is listening? We'll just tell all these things in a couple of minutes, so don't worry about what is a listener and all this thing. Okay, so that means the port number. And also, for example, whenever your friend is coming to your house, he can either come by a bike, or can come by a bus, or may come by a plane, or whatever. Similarly, we need to know what is the transport protocol from this machine to this machine, and maybe TCP is the transport protocol, right? So if we know this thing, then what we can do, a client machine can connect the client machine, from the client machine, a client software, and this client software may be your SQL Plus, or maybe your SQL developer, or Toad, or whatever. Okay, once this thing's known, what we need to feed all this information in a particular manner so that we can connect to here, and that particular manner is a very weird string. I'm going to show you one of them. Okay, it's a very weird string, and that weird string is going to look like this. Okay, so in this example, what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to connect to a host name which is called ec2 dash some number dot dash subcompute dot amazon aws.com. Okay, and then my database name is xe. So what I need to do, I need to give the username, password, and then this string. Okay, if I give this string, then I can connect to from this machine to this database server. Alright, so instead of, let's say for example, it's not like, we are just not going to connect only one time, multiple users, multiple clients are going to connect and so on. So instead of writing the weird string again and again, what we can do, we can alias that weird string to a value called db, or I can call it xyz, pqr, or whatever I name. So basically what essentially I'm saying, that I'm essentially saying, so basically imagine this is the address. Okay, this is the complete address in a particular format. Because why we need a particular format? Because this client only understands that format. Okay, so then what we did, we call this weird string a name, and that name is called alias, or this is something called TNS alias. Okay, so using TNS alias, what we are going to do, we are going to connect. I'm going to show you how we are going to do that. Before that, let's first go to the machine. So basically we are going to connect to this machine ec2 whatever. Okay, so basically here is that machine ec2 79 west 1 compute.amazon.aws.com. so what I want to show you is that this is a database server. I am connected using my Unix user ID and password. I have connected to that database server, and before I want to go do something, I just want to show you something interesting. If I do ps minus ef grep ora, so basically we discussed about the background processes, and these are the background processes actually. Okay, so these are the background processes, and also this is being consumed some memory that we are not, we do not know how much, but yeah, it is consuming some memory, and this is where your database is running at this moment. Let's do one thing, let's count how many of such processes are right now. So right now we have 38 number of processes running on this database server. Okay, and now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my machine. In my machine I have my SQL plus, so this is my client machine. So in other words, let's draw this thing. So in this machine I am going to, this is my client machine. In this client machine I am going to start SQL plus, and the one that, this black machine, black and white thing, this is a telnet connection to the database server, and the database server is somewhere here. I'm just connecting there, and what I saw is that in this database server right now I have 38 number of processes running. Okay, and then what I do, I know that I have a user, and the user name is demo. It's not Scott. I have created already a user in this database server called demo, and the password is demo. So essentially what we are trying to do, we are trying to connect from this SQL plus to this demo user, and to connect that we started an SQL plus, and SQL plus will ask me give the username, so therefore I give demo, then demo, the password. Then here is asking the host string. The host string, what you can do, you can give this complete string from here to here. Okay, that is an option, but instead of giving that complete string, what I did in my tns names.ora, that's a particular file on which I define that this string is equivalent to a string called db, to an alias called db. So therefore instead of giving this whole string, I just give db, and I say okay. So what is going on right now, we are trying to connect. So it's so basically it's say that connected to this, right? So basically what happened, that when the moment I hit that enter in the SQL plus, a connection started from this client machine to this database server. So this is called a connection. So now let's go and then check how many server processes are running now. So it looks like there are, actually should be, it looks like there are 40. Okay, so essentially it was something 38 and then it become 40. So what happens, why there are two more processes coming up? Okay, so then let's go back and then do an exit here. Let's go and check how many processes are there. So it become 39. Okay, okay, so then let's say, like, so the moment I am exiting from my SQL plus, one process is going down. The moment I am going to make a connection, so let's try to do again another connection, demo db. So it's going to be, it's trying to connect and it's already connected now. And let's check how many processes are there. So become 40. So essentially what we are doing is, whenever we are connecting from the client, one process is coming up in the database server. When we are going out, that process is gone. So we need to see what is really happening. Okay, so we need to see what is really happening in the background. Whenever we are connecting from our client, we have one more process is coming up in the database server, and when you are disconnecting from the client, the process is going. So to understand that, let's try to see another analogy. Let's say here is an hotel. Okay, so let's say this is an hotel, and then let's say here is a person who wants to go to that hotel. So whenever this person wants to go to this hotel, so what happens is that at the entrance there is a gatekeeper, or so there is a gatekeeper who is basically taking this person, and then he is basically in the back. What we have some receptionist 1, receptionist 2, and so on. Okay, so whenever this person is going to this hotel, so what is happening is that the gatekeeper, he is first in receiving this person, and then he is saying that, don't worry, don't come to me anymore, just directly, instead of coming to me, directly go to the R1, the receptionist 1. Again another person is coming, then what he is doing is, first I go to the gatekeeper, and then from the gatekeeper, the gatekeeper told me to go to the receptionist number 2, and so on. So this is exactly what is happening in the database also. Whenever we have a client request, or when the client connects to a database server, what happens is that there is a gatekeeper, and that gatekeeper name is listener. Okay, so every client should go to the listener, and then what the listener does, listener creates a receptionist, or in database language it is called a dedicated server. Okay, so the listener is going to fork a dedicated server, and then it will tell the client to connect to that dedicated server process directly. Okay, and then this listener is there to receive the other users or other clients. Then say client number 2 comes to first to the listener, and listener is going to create a fork a dedicated server process, and then the client can directly talk to the dedicated server. So this is something what in our analogy we have the receptionist thing. Okay, so if this is the case, I just want to show you a better diagram. So therefore in step 1, a client connection comes, and then when the client connection comes here, the listener is going to step 2 going to fork a dedicated server process, and then the client is going to directly talk to the dedicated server. And this is why each time you are starting a new client, your number of processes is increasing by 1, and whenever you are disconnecting or you are quitting, in that case this dedicated server is also cleaned up by the listener, or it is done by some other processes. Okay, so what we have started our diagram with this, and then this is what we reach now. So he's in the presence of a client comes to listener, and then listener creates a dedicated server 1. So let's say this is client 1, so therefore this is dedicated server process 1, and then the listener, basically the client, is going to directly talk to that dedicated server. Again we have client 2 comes, so client 2 first time is go to listener, the same thing that I told you. Step 1, it goes to the listener, and listener forks of another dedicated server ds2, and then asks the client to connect directly to that dedicated server process. Okay, so then dedicated server process is attached, can access the instance SGA, and then dedicated server process can also basically the disk IO and all these things can come from the file to here. So essentially this is what we have seen here is the revised picture. Okay, and so basically the picture whatever we drew in the last video is now a little bit we extend that, where we have including a dedicated server, and essentially this dedicated server is a workhorse process which does all sort of work for this client. So after this client connected, he is going to, let's say this client is going to give select star from EMP. Okay, then this dedicated server process is going to process all these commands on behalf of this client. Okay, and this dedicated server process does a lot of things. Okay, so here is another problem in our approach. The problem here is that, consider again that hotel. Let's say I have this is my client 1, this is my client 2, let's say this is my client 1000. In this approach, what we need 1000 receptionists to serve 1000 client. If you understand, this is not really a scalable way. Like, can you see that in a hotel we can have this kind of scenario? And imagine that, see, like if this client is just doing, and then client is not doing anything, that means this receptionist is also ideal. Therefore it is not a good model. If this client is very aggressive, or if this client is doing a lot of things, then it makes sense to have a one-to-one mapping with receptionist. Or if this client is doing a lot of things, then okay, we have one dedicated server process. But the downsides of this approach is that we are going to have one-to-one dedicated server process. That means if I have 1000 client, then I'm going to have 1000 dedicated server processes. And processes in computer is take some memory, it also consumes CPUs and all this thing. Therefore this is not a scalable approach. Okay, so therefore in our next video we are going to discuss about something called shared server approach. Okay, so with this I'm going to conclude this video, and watch the next video to understand how shared server works.